Welcome to the Great Girlfriends podcast, where we discuss life, love, laughter, and everything in between. I'm your host, Sybil Amuti.
And don't you just love how I brought in our studio audience today? Those are my friends and family, y'all. They're here to clap it up and celebrate this great girlfriend magic that is happening here on the show. So without further ado, grab something great to drink, grab your pen and paper, and get ready for this week's episode. Enjoy.
Oh my gosh, great girlfriends. Y'all know I say I'm excited all the time, but it's because I only have the most amazing women join me on the podcast. And every single time I have the pre-convo, I'm like, y'all are gonna love my next guest. You're gonna eat her up because she's that much of a woman and a storyteller and a poet and an author. And there's humor there, there's joy. She's a Southern girl and she's unapologetically a carb lover, which I'm like, come on, biscuit lover, come on, somebody. So I want to welcome a poet, great girlfriend and sister to so many, Amena Brown Owen, to the show today.
Oh, girl, when I tell you I'm so excited to be here, I feel all the girlfriend vibes. I feel it.
Do you feel it? It's for you. It's for you. Welcome, girl. Welcome. Listen, I was telling Amina, great girlfriends, how I was fangirling. I had followed her for many, many years, and she wrote a piece called Masterpiece that I first discovered. And a friend of mine told me how late I was, and I was like, "Okay, I'm late, but I'm here." You know how your friends be like, "I can't believe you didn't know," and I'm like, "Well, I can't believe you didn't put me on." So, if you thought I was
Okay.
supposed to know this, see how you put it back on your friend? Why didn't you put me on? So that's what I did to her. So,
I
Amina, how
love
are
it.
you today?
I am doing great. I'm doing great. I'm just, you're having one of those weeks where you're just trying to make sure you eat food and drink water and finish your work. That's that's how my week is
That's it.
going.
That's it. That's one of those weeks where it's like, when I get to Friday, I don't know what I'm gonna eat. I'm not gonna apologize for it. I'm gonna hit that sofa and
At
I'm just
all.
right, you
Hmm.
know?
That's it. That's it. It's no bra. It's ugly sweats. Like cute sweats are for a different time. It's ugly sweats. They're faded. They used to be black. They're charcoal gray now. That's what
Yes.
it's about.
Give me my bonnet, leave me alone, like that kind of life. Yes. Well, listen, I hope I can add a burst of joy and sunshine and laughter to your week because this is going to be one of my favorite recordings for sure. Amina, as a storyteller, I know that does not come easy to be a creative, a content writer, developer, storyteller, poet, all the things that come along with that. But life is a storytelling experience, right? So we kind of live these
Yeah.
stories, and then you get to make them come alive and how you articulate it. If you want to pay it forward through your art, through your poetry, through the books, through your podcast, all the different mechanisms that we use. But life is really a big story. And we are in our legacy, and we're in the creation of our legacy, telling our stories. So I want to start with the little girl Amina, and I'm going to start this sentence, and then you can bring her all the way to the table. So there once was a
Okay.
girl named Amina.
Mm. There once was a girl named Amina who dreamed of being on stage as a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that. I watched secretly, I realize now that this is not a thing. I don't know that this is a thing that's happening to children now, but I was raised in a generation of parents that left us unattended for long periods of time.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And due to being a latchkey kid, I watched a lot of comedians, I'm sure earlier than I was supposed to. I distinctly remember watching Whoopi Goldberg's one woman show, probably as like an 8-year-old, 8, 9-year-old.
Mm.
I
Mm-hmm.
remember watching Eddie Murphy's Delirious at 8 or 9 years old.
Mm.
And Great Girlfriends, we know that those things are not necessarily for children,
Yes.
but because I was a latchkey kid and just started going through my mom's VHS collection, that really put a little seed in me that whatever I was seeing those comedians do on stage, I remember going through like a phase as a little girl that I really wanted to do that. But then the funny thing, Sybil, is I sort of forgot about it. Like as I got older, I got more into writing. And so then I just really saw myself as a writer. And it really wasn't until I was in my late 20s that that marrying the comedy and the poetry and the stage part started to come back, that took a while to return, almost 20 years to return. But
Wow.
now, it's back and we're here.
Yeah. Wow. So wait, that big pause, what was that pause about? The years that you just kind of put it to the side. What was that? What were you doing?
I mean, I think a part of it was I feel like once I got past sort of that fourth, fifth grade, I just became more of a withdrawn
Hmm.
kid, just more into reading. So I read a lot and I wrote a lot, but I got to where it wasn't as much in my mind that I would be a stage person. I thought that I would be a novelist. I was more into becoming a young Toni Morrison or a young Alice Walker.
Hmm.
So I wasn't thinking as much about stage. People ask me all the time, especially people that have seen me perform poetry. They always ask, did you do drama when you were in school? Were you in plays? And I am always telling them, no, I read a lot. I wrote a lot. I really didn't start getting the bug again for stage. It's probably late 90s. I actually brought this up recently to someone and started to feel old because I said it was the year Love Jones came out. And he turned to me and he said, "Oh, yeah, my mom loves that movie." And I was like, "What? Your mama?
Right, 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 right.
Mm,
I mean, you don't
You
love because wait, what?
excuse?
Did you just do that
Excuse?
to me? Right, right, right.
Because are you saying me and your mama the same? Because I'm looking at you thinking I can't be your mama, right? Right? And then I'm like
Exactly.
doing the math, like, can I be your mama? Anyway, maybe I can be your mama. I don't know.
Right,
So
right.
Love Jones, came out in 96. And that was my first time seeing that character that Lorenz Tate played performing spoken word in this, Chicago spoken word venue. That was my first time as a teenager going, oh, so I think it just took some time for that to come back and for me to see this visual because other than hip hop, really, I didn't know a lot about how poetry and stage could come together. And once I saw Love Jones, I was like, oh, this is like a thing. And then I
Mm-hmm.
moved to Atlanta for college to attend Spelman.
Mm-hmm.
And Atlanta still does today, has a very thriving poetry scene. But, I was moving here in the late 90s. So that was peak, Def Poetry Jam
Mm-hmm.
time
Mm-hmm.
around the era that I moved here. So I actually started going to open mics in real life, right? Not just seeing sort of this fictionalized version in a film, but getting a chance to really see the poets here in the city. And I think now, I don't know that I would have articulated it that way then, but now I'm like, oh, it totally makes sense that I was mesmerized by watching those two people perform on stage. All of that came flooding back to me in my 20s.
Mm. That's so good. I don't know. I feel like, God gives you these gifts in your spirit where he's kind of like, don't forget, don't forget,
Yeah.
don't forget, don't get caught up in, chasing paper and a career that will, drag you back when I'm trying to take you forward with this gift. And this gift of poetry has taken you so far and so wide. And did you think that poetry was going to be the gateway for you?
No.
Mm.
No,
Mhm.
not at all.
Mhm.
I kind of felt like poetry for me, it was something that I loved doing, that I started doing on my own outside of class around 12 years old, just writing. And I loved doing it. But other than Nikki Giovanni and Sonia Sanchez and Maya Angelou, I mean, they were the only sort of figures that I knew were making a living doing
Mhm.
poetry. And
Mhm.
as a kid, that just felt so far, So I was like, man, that's nice for them. I'm not sure that's a career for me. For
Mhm.
some reason, being a novelist at the time, that felt more realistic to me. I mean, now I laugh about it because I have friends who are professors now, but then my idea was like, oh, I'll graduate from Spelman, I'll get my degree in English, and then I'll go on, I'll get a master's, I'll teach, I'll spend my summers and breaks writing. And now that I actually have friends that are professors, I laugh because they're
Mhm.
like, that's what you think we do?
Right, right, right,
You
right,
think
right.
during the
Yes.
summer and on our breaks that we just are languishing in the
Yes.
flowers, writing, girl. That's what you
Yes.
think. So I laugh now thinking that. But yeah, I think that was my initial thought. I wanted to do something involving writing in some way. But I really graduated college just not knowing, I felt feeling like there was a big gap, Sybil, between, well, here I am at 22 years old, knowing that I want to be a writer. And then all of the writers I know that actually made careers of doing that, their careers blew much later in their life. So
Mm-hmm.
what do I do between now and when that point comes? And I do feel like that journey was very rough and tumble. And I try to share that with people because I think when we talk about, purpose and calling and words like this, there is sometimes this assumption like, oh, I was supposed to wake up, at
Child.
13 years old and know exactly what it was and just do that
If
until my
only.
life's over.
Right, right.
And I'm like, it's actually more like, well, I worked a job I hated. And then I worked at that smoothie place one time while I was trying to figure out, it
Mm-hmm.
was very
Mm-hmm.
like rough and tumble. So I think for me, I didn't realize poetry was going to be the gateway, but it totally was the gateway to everything that my career is right now. Absolutely.
Mm. Let's talk about the rough and tumble because one of the things that I hear my mentees and just people who are starting at anything say that Instagram gives you the facade of things, right? And you don't get to see people's journey. And I hear that to some degree. I think it's very true. And I also think sometimes people want to believe that the journey is easy. So they only look for the shiny stuff. They don't tend to even want to
Right.
hear that you're going to have years, maybe, some people's decades. It takes people time and experience, journey to actually really manifest things. It's not just an overnight. And, even with overnight, you got the sustaining pieces of it. So I want to talk a little bit about your rough and tumble and what that was like for you.
I think the first part of that was right out of school. My thought was to apply to grad school to get a master's in fine arts in poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought getting a master's of fine arts, that's 3 years, 3-year program. It'll buy me time to figure out what I'm going to do. And my first rough and my
Mm-hmm.
first tumble
Mm-hmm.
was that I applied to 3 grad schools to get a master's of fine arts in poetry and was denied to all 3
Mm.
schools. And I had no plan B because I didn't see myself as a corporate person. I wasn't sure how that would go. So having no plan B, I just had to move into the house of 2 of my friends that I went to church with, who were very gracious to me, let me move into their basement.
Mm-hmm.
I worked at a smoothie place for a while. I worked as an admin assistant to an event producer in Atlanta for a while, part-time. These still weren't full-time jobs. I took on temp jobs and worked temp while I worked at night as a music journalist and covered the music
Wow.
scene in Atlanta for a while. I was
Yeah.
still getting poetry gigs during this time, but they definitely weren't enough to pay any bills or anything. So I would kind of take those gigs and travel as I could. I worked in corporate a while. I discovered 6 months into that job that I hated it. I was like, this is not going to be it. I'm not meant for this blazer life. I
Not
really
the blazer
honestly,
life.
girl, like I just now came back to wearing blazers within the
Right,
last
right.
5 years. No
With
lie,
peace.
because I was that just upset about
Yes.
having worn a blazer in
Yes.
corporate. So I worked in corporate, worked for Fortune 500 in communications for 2 years. And I think that was the big revelation for me because I was about 25, 26, 27, the couple of years I worked there. And I think at that time, just realizing like, okay, I have an opportunity to maybe decide the life that I want. And I was looking at some of how the other Black women were functioning at the company where I worked and the freedoms that they didn't have that many of them discovered they wanted. And that was my
Mm.
moment of going, I think I got to leave corporate and I got to do this full time. And I didn't know what that looked like. All I knew, Sybil, was that I was getting requests to perform, and some of them I couldn't take because I would run out of vacation days, or the gig
Mm.
was on a Wednesday and I couldn't figure out how to take that in the middle of my work week.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided, okay, I think I need to quit this job and just leap out there. I got my little Christmas bonus. And as soon as it cleared, because we don't just get the check in hand, we want it to clear the
Right, right.
account. So okay, to be clear. So when
Yes.
the check cleared, put in my little 2 weeks notice. And let me tell you what happened in that first year and a half being a full-time artist. I promptly went broke. And let's talk about that real quick, why we went broke. It's two reasons. Okay.
Let's talk about
because it happens. Let's talk about it. Simple. It's two reasons I went broke. Number one was because I fell in love with this man. It's not the man I'm married to now. Okay. It's not the man I'm married to now. It was a different man. And I fell in love with him. And he was a bit more established in his career than I was at the time. So he had freedom to do things like go bowling in the middle of the day. Because of where he was in his business. He could say, hey, it's Thursday. Let's just, watch some movies and hang out together. Well, I was head over heels in love with him. So anything he said, I was like, yes, let's do that. Did it occur to me that I needed to be building my business at that time? No, girl, because I was in love with him.
Man. That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So that was part of it. And then the other part was, I don't think I understood that by becoming a full-time artist, I was becoming an entrepreneur. I didn't understand that those two things were the same. And some of that I think was just like the 90s dreams a lot of us had that, Puffy was going to come and see you perform and sign you and give you this money, to start your artist career.
That's right.
And then you discover like Puffy isn't coming, girl. Like you are going to build this business from the ground. Like Puffy's not going to be at the open mic, like looking for you. To sign you. So after breaking up with this man, well, let me really phrase it truthfully how it happened. After being dumped by this man, I need to be clear about that. Okay.
Right.
We had broke up, but I wasn't choosing the breakup. He was breaking up with me, to be very clear about that. Then it was like all the revelations were there. Like, okay, now you've spent this really critical time, in love with someone that can't be in a healthy relationship with you. That was basically his breakup with me. Like, there's a thing you want and I can't be that. And like, we don't need to be together. So I was sort of picking up the pieces of my heart at the time and also the business. So I went broke in the first 2 years that I was a full-time artist, car repossessed. I'm talking about broke, Sybil, and really had to go back and work customer service job at night, take whatever gigs I could and rebuild my self-esteem, my little broken heart at the time, and got an opportunity as I was in the rebuilding process, getting out of debt. I mean, everything. Got an opportunity to perform at a really large event at that time. And it's that event that got me enough exposure to really do this as a full-time writer and performer without being broke. And I'm still not at a like make it rain point of a budget right here. I'm just at a point now as an artist where like I can eat chicken when I would like to have chicken. And that's nice.
And you're not looking for Diddy. I mean, though, if he came, right? But you're like, we're not. And that's how you know how old I am, that I'm just like, he's Puffy forever. And I just don't care. Like you can change your name 1,000 times. It's Sean Puffy Combs, period. Puff. That's right. Bad boy for life, right?
Okay.
I love that so much. You know what? And during that time, there's so many moments, I'm sure, where you said, I want to quit.
Oh, yeah.
Is this for me? What would you say to yourself in the ring, and how'd you get yourself back in there to go, not yet, girl, not yet. You're not finished.
I think a part of it was I guess, like how we define success and failure. And when I left my corporate job, and the job I was working, when I worked corporate, it was one of those companies that really doesn't like, they don't really do big layoffs. It's like once you start working there, you could keep that job until you decide you don't want to work there. That's how stable of a company it was. So when I told those people, well, I'm leaving because I want to be a writer, I mean, a lot of my managers and supervisors looked at me like, this is crazy. Like, why would you go do something so unsure when you could stay here and just get this like secure paycheck forever? And so I think a part of it for me was dealing with the fact that it felt like a failure, that my business did not immediately succeed.
Mhm. Mhm.
that I didn't have that amazing report to say, especially in those first couple of years. So I think a part of that journey, especially when I was working my little night customer service job, was giving myself an opportunity to heal from that and to understand that I don't have to berate myself because things didn't go the way I planned.
Mhm.
But I had to give myself a little bit of time right there to process, okay, what happened? Do I feel I'm in the right place? And for me, in my relationship to God at that time, I really went back to God and just had this moment where I was like, okay, I felt like I was taking a step along the path that you wanted for me. And am I still on the path that you want for me? Because I want to be on the path you want for me more than I want to be on this path I've decided. And if this path I've
Mhm.
decided isn't the path you have for me, then show me the path that you have for me. But I will be honest, Sybil, it took me probably 2 or 3 months of feeling overwhelmingly sad
Mhm.
before I got to the point that I could even pray that prayer, honestly.
Wow.
And once I prayed that prayer, there was something releasing about it in my soul, I feel like, and some healing that I did feel inside my soul there. And it was interesting to me that after that moment, in those next few months, these opportunities started trickling in that I could not have found for myself. So that to me is sort of the mystery and the amazingness of God for me in my faith context of feeling like I needed to release that, release
Mhm.
sort of what people may have thought about this choice I made, release myself from beating myself up for whatever mistakes I made in the process and for the things I just didn't know. You know, sometimes a mistake or, something can be like, well, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But like some of it was also like you just didn't know. You were doing what you knew at the
Right.
time, which was very limited. So not to judge my past self for not knowing those things. And as the doors open, then deciding, okay, if you're going to be a full time artist, that also means you become a businesswoman. And that's the
Mhm.
only way you can walk this path now?
I love that. I love that so much. I feel like with you, there is such a devotion to your heritage. There's a devotion to your journey. There's a devotion to what you know for sure. And you even have this quote I saw on Instagram: "Start with your roots and always return there." That for me says a lot about heritage. So I want to know from you. I mean, even being a Southern girl who went to an HBCU, who loves your culture, and you're here for a biscuit, and you're here for a prayer, you're here for a cuss, and you're here for all the authenticity that comes along with culture, including the Diddy days to the Love Jones days to the to all of the things
Okay.
that make us so vibrant. Talk about that a bit. How do you stay true to your roots? And then how do you get back there when life tries to pull you away from your roots?
Yeah, I do think the groundedness of my roots, like I think that line was coming back to me and I feel like it's a theme that's recurring in a lot of my poetry. That line was coming back to me because I do feel like it's this constant return to that. And I am a church girl. I grew up in church most of my life.
Mhm.
And I remember having a time where I had to leave a church because it became this unhealthy place. And that was this season of returning to the roots of the poetry scene
Mhm.
and taking the time to go back there and learn to write new stories, not just stories that made sense in the church settings where I'd been performing, but how do I tell more about myself, about where I'm from? How does my family play a role in that? How does the place where my family is from play a role in that? And so I think that journey started me back into really exploring what are the stories I have to tell. And
Mhm.
they could be, my grandmother's stories that I overheard, her
Yes.
talking about, could be when we were on Great Girlfriends podcast, my mom had such close girlfriends when I was growing up and, things that they were talking about before they shooed me off to bed or whatever,
Mhm.
like all those things become the story for me. And I will say, even right now, Sybil, like currently where my career is now, before the last 5 years, I spent the bulk of my professional career in predominantly white, conservative Christian settings.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't grow up in those settings, and I didn't know that that was the door that would open for me, but it did.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, Sybil, I found myself feeling less and less rooted, less
Mm-hmm.
and less grounded there, because I was entering these spaces where a lot of the times I was the only Black woman,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the only woman of color,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the only woman, period, in some of those green room type of spaces, right?
Yeah.
And so I think for me, I will tell you one moment that I had, which is why I'm so thankful for Black women in my life. I went to a Black woman retreat. And when I was at the retreat, there was a healing circle. And when you're inside the healing circle, you can share, where you feel you're wounded, and the other women speak back to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I started talking to those Black women because I said to myself that year, as that year was ending, I said to myself, I have got to find a space that is led by Black women and for Black women so that I can just go there and sort of reconnect back to me and
Mm-hmm.
to the women I come from. And
Mm-hmm.
so I decided to just tell all my business in the healing circle. I mean,
Yes.
that's how raw my situation was at the moment, that I was
Uh-huh.
like, we don't really have time to play games, trying to be cute about what's happening. I just went ahead and ugly cried. I gave them the Sophia from The
I
Color
love
Purple, the
it.
rock and cry. I just went ahead. I was like, look, I came
Yes.
here because I need this help. So I told them. And one of the Black women looked at me in my eyes, Sybil, and she said, you have to leave those spaces you've been working in. She said, every time you re-enter there, it is re-traumatizing you. She
Mm.
said, you have to get out. And she said, God has other places for you to be. God has other places for you to make money, but you have to get out. And you know how you have had a feeling inside yourself,
Mm-hmm.
but you have not given yourself the permission
Yeah. Yep.
to acknowledge the feeling.
Yep.
And when that Black woman looked at me in my eyes and said, you have to get out, it was like I had been having that feeling for a
Mm-hmm.
couple of years when she said it to me. But in that moment, something about being in that circle of Black women and her looking at me that way, it was like it just snapped in me right then. Like,
Mm.
no, it's not just that I need to feel like I need to get out. It's
Mm-hmm.
that I got to start making the moves now. So I do feel the last few years of my career has been exiting a lot of those very conservative white spaces, finding more spaces that are led by Black women, finding more spaces where I'm not the only one in the room,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and finding spaces where my voice as a Black woman is fully welcome, where I'm not being expected to parrot what
Mm.
anyone would want me to say,
That's
but
right.
where I am being invited into the space to be exactly who I am. And that has been a work for me in the last 5 to 7 years, I would say. But I'm experiencing a lot of healing now from
Mm.
having heeded the advice of those Black women.
Mm. That is so good. So good. It's essential. And you know what? Even actually, having the courage to pursue those spaces is healing, because I feel like they are gifted to you when you open your heart for it, right? When you make room for it and
Yeah.
when you say, this is what I want. Because even, when I was reaching out to my assistant, I was like, I want Amena Brown. Can you see if she would possibly, maybe, kind of, sort of, hopefully, I don't know, you know, the ask, I was like, maybe she'll have a little time. And your yes meant so much to me that you would even consider coming on to the podcast and sharing your story and sharing your journey. And we can continue to trade sisterhood. So many of us are
Yeah.
working in different verticals, different industries. And if we just continue to trade humanity and trade sisterhood and trade space in this kind of way, I feel like it's the gateway to expansion for all of us, to even just, and even for our daughters. My daughter can go out and become, knowing that she's covered along her journey. And I feel like she's got to consistently, carry brick by brick every step of the way. So I want to applaud you for that. And I know that there's someone who's listening who's like, yes, what address, where's the healing circle so I can jump in the,
Okay. Okay. And look, Sybil, I don't know, I know the women in the Great Girlfriends community grew up in different ways. But listen, Sybil, I grew up in a Pentecostal non-denominational church. So when those women
Mhm.
said they were gonna have a healing circle, Sybil, I was nervous about it, honestly, because I was like, is somebody gonna try to like hee-baba on me?
Right.
You know what I mean?
You
Like,
gonna need body
I
ministry?
don't
Like,
know.
what's happening? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure. Cause it like if I know you and I trust your he baba, then that's okay. But like we just met. So what's going on? Is there gonna be like some slaying in the spirit? What is happening? I was like, Amina, you just gotta go in here and try to be open hearted. And thankfully nobody did he baba on me. But those of you that grew up Pentecostal, you know what I mean.
The he baba is real. You know what's so funny? But isn't that the humor of life that like I feel like this is just I'm going to just go here for 2 seconds because there is so much power in, your comedic side, that that laughter, that part of you that looks for the funny moments that could even possibly happen, because that healing circle could have gone south and then you would have had this hilarious story of how a woman tried to he baba you and you had to block her and say no thank you for the he baba. I am not interested.
Okay. Okay.
But even that curiosity that comes along with laughter, it opens you up to these moments where big things can happen. You got the word that you needed right in that space where
Yeah.
it could have been a heavy hibaba gone south, or it could have been a moment of divine intervention, divine
That's right. That's
intervention
right.
from heaven to get you a
Yeah.
download that you needed to step deeper into your womanhood and your identity and your heritage and your culture and get the healing that you wanted. And I want to tap into this last little piece that I think is so important and so sacred for every single woman who is on her journey and always, wanting to reaffirm that every facet of our life is important, not just our profession. Our profession
Mhm.
is a big piece of what we do, who we are, and how we move, but our romantic life, like love and passion and all that audacious love that can come along with the right partner. I just want you to touch on how you made room for that alongside this big career and these big ideas of going out and being a world storyteller, a change maker through storytelling. How did you make space for the love of your life who came on, did your mic check, brought all that bass on the mic, and was just he was like, mic check one. I'm like, yo, hello, Amina? Because I
Okay.
thought it was a woman, but let me double check. No. But how did you make love for that? Make room for that in your life? How did you do that?
Oh man. I feel like rough and tumble is the theme here
Uh-huh.
because that the journey to me for finding my now husband that we it will be 10 years for us being married this
Mm.
September actually. And so when I think about the journey that led me to him, led us to each other, that was a wild thing because I like I told you I grew up in church, so I really didn't have a lot of education regarding dating at all.
Uh-huh.
So I really got into my 20s and was kind of like, I don't really know how to date. And then I started dating and I always dated the same man, basically. I mean, he had
Mhm.
different, outward looks, but his insides were the same. Always fun, always a good time, wonderful to talk to, but cannot commit.
Mm.
That
Mhm. Mhm.
was, it was like I could walk in a room full of men I never met and pick that one. That one
Mhm.
right there, he's a good time. We had a wonderful time. We went to see the movies and we talked about music and all that stuff. But boy, when it came down to commitment, I could not ever pick someone that was interested in that, which was really what I was saying I wanted, but somehow I keep attracting this into my life. So I did a dating program, Sybil.
Wow. I love this.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
I did a dating program based on this book called How to Get a Date Worth Keeping. And in the program, basically, you had to be willing to casually date almost anyone. Like the only reason that you would not go on a date with someone, like a first date at least, would, of course, if they were like an unsafe person, they're
Mhm.
disrespectful. Okay, those are reasons. But like you don't like their teeth, they laugh like they're drowning. Those aren't reasons to not go on a date with them.
Uh-huh.
So I
Oh
did
my
this dating
gosh.
program,
Uh-huh.
okay,
Mhm.
which forced me to end up in dating situations with men that I would not have picked. But as I did this, I discovered there were other things I was attracted to that I didn't know because I kept
Mm.
dating the same type of guy, right?
Mhm.
So I'm talking about, I was going all over Atlanta where I live at that time. This was, in the before times when we were not in this, pandemic situation. I
Mhm.
joined the hiking club, Sybil. I was just introducing myself to men at the Publix because part of the program is you have to meet 5 new men. In my case, you had to meet 5 new men every week.
Wow.
You didn't have to date them. You had to meet them,
But you had to meet him.
and they had to have a way to get in touch with you. You had to have a way to get in touch with them.
Oh, child, I'm
That was the
panicking.
rules. Okay. Okay. Thursday would come, and I would literally be like, what am I about to do? It is Thursday. I haven't met anybody. So I'm
Mhm.
just in the paper online looking for a meetup. I went to
This
the
is
Tall
so
People's Club, Sybil. Okay. These were desperate times because I was like, I got to just start growing in this area. Because the premise of the book is not just about like, here, girl, here are the tips to getting you a husband. The premise
Mhm.
of the book is to help you have a healthy dating life.
Mhm.
And if, a committed relationship is what you want, and then that is a part of what your healthy dating life could lead to. But you can't have that if your dating life is not healthy. So I committed to the process and actually met my husband. Not, he wasn't one of my like 5 guys that I was meeting. I met him because we were both artists and we ended up in some of the same environments. But I continued doing the program because I didn't know if our beginning friendship was going to become a dating thing. So in a way, that gave us time to actually be friends. We were friends, we worked together, we did shows together. So by the time things started to turn with us, where we realized, okay, we're two friends that keep finding excuses to see each
Mhm.
other. Is that becoming something more than a friendship? I was actually ready to be attracted to the things I actually wanted in a relationship
Wow.
versus finding myself attracted to the things that were really more about my own woundedness. That's how it was for me. I had some
Mm.
other issues going on with me, and I will say other experiences, right? In my family growing up, being a kid of divorced parents. So there were other layers to what was making me choose the types of men that I was picking. But
Yeah.
because I committed to the program, I was able to recognize in my husband, like, this is like a good man, like a good man who actually wants to be in a committed relationship with you. So yeah, we were platonic friends and went from platonic friends to dating and then got married. And I will also speak to this. So I am married to a white man. He is tall and a redhead. Actually, one of my Spelman sisters called him a redwood tree. And I'm gonna tell you, as a poet, that was kind of upsetting for me that I've been with him all this time and I never thought of that. She was like, "Girl, you got you a tall redwood tree." And I was like proud, but also kind of mad at her. Like, why did you just come up with a term for my man? I'm sitting here a poet and didn't even think of that.
That is amazing.
Anyway, okay. I think a part of it for me was also really broad, like in a certain way, Sybil, broadening what I was expecting,
Mm.
but also narrowing in on what was really important to me.
Mhm.
And for me, it was more important to me these certain things like in a man's character. And it was important to me that we shared the same faith. And, those things were important to me. And then I just decided at a certain point in my dating process, I was like, okay, I don't want to be so concerned about the package that these things show up in. I
Mm.
want to be mostly concerned about, are those like internal things there?
Mhm.
And so for me, that partner in life happened to show up in this tall and wonderful and talented redheaded white guy. And that ended up being a part of my story. But I'm happy. I'm happy that I did the process so that I could be prepared, to be with somebody that actually wanted to commit to me. But yeah, that's our story of how we became partners for life.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I love it. I love it. I love it. I think, so many women will get lost in the process of the dating and sifting through and learning, because in that process, that's an invitation for you to learn more about you. Yes, you will meet a whole bunch
Yes.
of what's, but you also have a chance to learn about yourself in ways that you would never imagine if you didn't open yourself up. So that is absolutely major, 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 major. And I hope you all, great girlfriends, I hope y'all are listening and going, maybe I should kind of rethink the way I look at this dating thing and rethink the way I approach it, because that opportunity for us to really learn more about ourselves is always sitting there. It's always there. It's always there.
That's right.
It is. So now, Amina, the last thing I want to find out from you, what will be your legacy?
Hmm. Wow. Such a deep question. I mean, I feel like I will say I hope that a part of my legacy is continuing to elevate the voices, the leadership, the gifts of women of color.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big part of it for me. That I hope people look back on my work and say, like, she did the best she could, uplifting those voices that we don't get to hear from as much as we should. I hope laughter is a part of my legacy. I want to bring joy to people through my work. I actually came up with a little short kind of statement from myself, and I hope my work helps people to access their joy. So I hope that is a
That's so
part of my
good.
legacy. And honestly, I know, I don't know if this sounds simple or what, but really I want my mom and my grandma to be proud of me. People ask me all the time, well, how do you stay humble? And I'm like, how do I stay humble? As long as that's my mama and that's my grandma.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I wish you
mm-hmm.
would walk in the house with your ego out. I wish you would do that. That's not going
Right,
to be
right.
acceptable here. So I want to make them proud. And I know that they sacrificed a lot for me to be able to be a poet. Three
Mm-hmm,
generations of women in my family sacrificed a lot that I would have the freedom to do that. So I
mm-hmm.
want to pay them back that good kind of debt. I want to owe them that and make them proud. Absolutely.
That's so beautiful. So beautiful. And I think the blessing of what you do is that yes, all of that is happening and will happen. Yes, people are accessing your joy. Yes, you are making them proud. Yes, women are feeling ignited and feeling empowered to be themselves and live their stories because of your stories. That unapologetic approach that you have to being Amina is setting other people free. So I just want to celebrate you for that. And that's what drew me to your light many moons ago. And, just even to the books that you've been a part of and the poetry that you've written, all the work that you do, just keep shining it bright. The world needs more and more and more of you, and that glow and that joy and that vibrance and all the articulate storytelling. It's essential.
Thank you, Sybil. Thank you so much, girl. I long for the day, Sybil, that we'll be able to be in person
I
somewhere where I
know.
can see you, great girlfriends. But
I
I am just so glad
know.
to be welcomed here into the community. And I'm glad we're in this together, sis. I really am.
We are. We're in it together. We're going to keep moving the culture forward, keep moving women forward. And I just want to continue to celebrate you, and thank you. Thank you for being with me today.
Thank you, Sybil.
Great girlfriends, did you enjoy this week's episode of the podcast? If so, would you please give us your amazing review on iTunes? Every single review helps another great girlfriend get plugged into the podcast, into the community. Speaking of community, make sure you join our Facebook group, The Great Girlfriends. You follow us on Instagram at The Great Girlfriends and on Twitter at _great GFS. Last but not least, we'd like to thank my amazing husband, Kwaku, Sam and Dilly, and all of you for being a part of the global community that makes us so strong. Please remember to share with your friends. Keep listening and keep being a great girlfriend. I'm Sybil Amuti, and I'm out. Peace.